So I think I might have an irrational dislike for Some Enchanted Evening. Okay, maybe dislike is too strong a word, but in nearly 10 years of talking about The Simpsons on YouTube, I've barely even mentioned this one. Which is weird, because it's literally the first Simpsons episode ever produced. Production code 7G01, the real pilot of The Simpsons. So what's the deal with this thing? Is it just too basic? Is the animation too crude? Or am I just holding a weird grudge about its troubled production? First, let's talk about that troubled production. Matt Groening once called this episode, "the show that almost killed The Simpsons." How dramatic. This is in reference to the original version of the animation and its infamous first screening for the producers. They had written 13 episodes, sent them off to be animated, and this is what came back first. Rubbery animation, characters totally off model, plain backgrounds. Also, Marge turns into a frog at one point. Upon seeing the original cut, James L. Brooks declared, "This is shit." And when asked what he meant, he clarified, "a foul substance which causes disease." They had to send it back to be redone, with an estimated 70% new animation in the final product. And the producers had to wait an entire week for Bart the Genius, to get a sense of whether the series was unviable if the rest of the episodes looked that bad. Thankfully, they didn't. They pushed the original September premiere back to December, and switched to episode 8 as the lead-off. As a result, it makes Some Enchanted Evening probably the weirdest Simpsons episode visually. Even when I was younger and didn't know the behind-the-scenes stuff described on the DVD commentary, it felt like something was off about it. After all, the visual look of the series changed dramatically over the course of Season 1. Just look at Bart the Genius and Homer's Odyssey, next to later episodes like Homer's Night Out and Krusty Gets Busted. It's like night and day. And this episode gets a mix of both visual styles. We get these relatively crude Dr. Marvin Monroe and Howard Flowers scenes mixed in with more polished stuff, like the kitchen scenes. Or how about some of the uncanny Marge facial expressions right here? But then this Homer-Bart scene right after looks pretty normal. Marvel at how elaborately animated this shaving sequence is. It still looks great even today. If you've never seen the DVD extra featuring 5 minutes of this original cut, I recommend tracking it down. Especially for the commentary, which is mostly the producers gasping in horror the whole time. It's really cool though, being able to directly compare the two versions. How Marge kissing her kids goes from this to this. How her fantasy sequence goes from 3 radios around her head to this more surreal imagery. And pretty much everything about this initial kitchen scene changed. No more trying to kiss Homer in the foyer and accidentally kissing the door. Even though the lipstick stain ended up in the final version. From a story perspective, there are definite pros and cons to moving Some Enchanted Evening to the season finale. One of the challenges of the plot is that they need to fit in a marriage crisis into Act 1, something that is usually built up over an entire episode. The build-up here is extremely fast. It opens with Marge quietly observing everyone, being snubbed by the kids and Homer, feeling anxious by herself, and calling the radio show. But things escalate immediately. Dr. Marvin Monroe dramatically tells her that her husband sees her as nothing and suggests she should leave Pedro. She's definitely being egged on right here, and Homer was indeed rude at the beginning, but I don't think her extreme anger is conveyed that well. Especially since they deleted the opening scene of Marge getting breakfast ready and talking about how much she loves it. In a vacuum, this big blow-up feels a teensy bit melodramatic. On the other hand, I think the story is helped along by having episodes like Homer's Night Out and Life on the Fast Lane having already aired. We've seen Marge disillusioned by Homer before in more detailed ways. We know their dynamic better. So as an extension of those stories, Act 1 works. This specific conflict is extraordinarily shallow, but it gets there. I think the Babysitter Bandit angle fares much better overall. Clearly, this is the main thrust of the story. The actual reason Homer and Marge go out is relatively unimportant to the proceedings. Penny Marshall delivers a wonderfully sinister performance as Miss Botts, hitting that assertive coldness to the character while dialing up the heat when the story needs it. Also, hey, it's that super smooth animation that gets shared around Twitter every 3 months. There isn't much to the story, but it's paced well and uses its meager plot elements in interesting ways. They establish the happy little elf stuff, highlighting Lisa's enthusiasm and Bart's disappointment. Then they can easily pivot to America's Most Armed and Dangerous and the Miss Botts reveal. Then later, when they're captured, they can borrow the happy little elves plot element again, making it the impetus for Maggie saving them. In addition, I love their usage of the telephone throughout the story. How they put in 2 different pranks in the first half, culminating in this suspenseful moment when Lisa's calling the hotline. I wouldn't call the telephone a Chekhov's gun or anything, there's always going to be a phone in the house, but it's a nice little motif that's sprinkled throughout the story. Oh, speaking of the suspense, it will never not bug me that those pickled beet jars are transparent and empty. Curse you, Klasky Chupo. I can see why Some Enchanted Evening was such an attractive concept for the first episode, because it really is a good spotlight for the 3 Simpsons kids, especially coming off of the Tracy Ullman shorts, which were full of Simpsons kids shenanigans. Bart's mouthy and rambunctious, Lisa's smarter but still bratty, even Maggie gets to show off her resourcefulness. She also falls down like 20 times in this episode. The story is kinda all over the place thematically, but it does end with a nice character statement about them. That raising 3 kids that can knock out and hogtie a stranger, they must be doing something right. Looking back on it, I kinda wish the Act 1 conflict related more to their parenting. Maybe this moral would tie things together a bit better. Homer and Marge's night out is pretty charming overall, even if there's not much to it. A bunch of sweet little observational moments, like dinner, dancing, missing their exit. There's absolutely no plot reason why this scene needs to be in the episode, but it's relatable and is a cute little indicator of how much they're enjoying each other. Gotta say, the second version of this dancing sequence is so much better than the original. The original, they're doing these kind of elaborate mambo moves all over the place, whereas right here, they perfectly convey the original intention. That Homer and Marge are sort of hokey oddballs that are 2 peas in a pod. Also, it's interesting, for their very first episode on primetime TV, how explicitly romantic it is. Not explicit in that we see anything, other than Marge's blue thing with the things. But you know, there aren't a ton of Simpsons episodes where Homer and Marge having sex is a specific plot point. The Simpsons were ready to bring animated adult situations to primetime TV. I appreciate the staging of these motel scenes, these front-facing shots from Homer and Marge's perspective, how Homer sways on the waterbed, his necktie bobbing up and down. I don't know. Later episodes don't storyboard their scenes like this. Some Enchanted Evening has that rough Season 1 style, but it's always visually interesting. I probably didn't need all this front-facing Mo, or Season 1 Mo in general, but it's at least interesting to look at. Also, hey, here's where The Simpsons invented CalArt style. From a jokes perspective, this one is definitely on the dry side of things, even by the first season standards. It suffers from the typical issues with pilot episodes, that later ones came along and did these joke setups much better, in less awkward ways. Prank phone calls, Mo giving advice, even Homer picking out a lobster was revisited. Although to be fair, no lobster could compare to Pinchy. Probably my favorite jokes are the "Leave Pedro," Marge growling at the kids, Lisa deciding to make the best of the situation, this argument Homer has with June Foray's character. I said Samson, not Simpson. I don't know if this ending joke about Homer really works, him taking the blame for setting her free. I think most people would have accidentally let her get away, including Marge. And besides, the Call of the Simpsons did this humiliating news story ending better. I think. Really, that's why I have relatively lukewarm feelings about Some Enchanted Evening as a whole. It's the simplest, most rudimentary episode that accidentally served as the culmination of the season. I'm personally a big believer in how our perception can be shaped by the order in which we view something. I think on a subconscious level, we build narratives in our heads about how a show is building up or falling off over time. And after an entire first season, where The Simpsons is growing visually, narratively, and comedically, Some Enchanted Evening feels like a small step backwards. Where are the ambitious story concepts of The Crepes of Wrath or Krusty Gets Busted? Where's the character relationship stuff of Moaning Lisa or Life on the Fast Lane? Why have all the secondary characters disappeared? There's only like 8 of our regulars in it. I think if this episode aired as the quote-unquote pilot episode as intended, my reaction would probably be, oh, it's pretty bare bones, but look at all that stuff it introduced. How influential. Production order versus airing order is kinda weird, you know? Just ask any Futurama fan. Even still, I'm glad that things shook out the way that it did. That Simpsons roasting on an open fire ended up as the premiere. You lose this showpiece for the Simpsons kids' shenanigans, But the Christmas episode still opens with character spotlights, does more world building, and its conclusion hits harder. However, even though Some Enchanted Evening became kind of a relic, at the very least, it's a relic with a strong personality. It serves as another example of why we like these characters, why the show had a bright future. In Season 1, you need these rudimentary hangout episodes to get to know them better, know what they're capable of. And sure, even if it did almost kill The Simpsons, Some Enchanted Evening somehow made the best out of a bad situation. At least we got a good DVD extra out of it.